Welcome back to logisticsales.com. And this is episode 39 of Mastering Our Sales series. Now, this is our fifth and final episode in our Crafting Compelling Emails segment. And today I'm going to be your host, Damon Grewal, and we also have our beautiful co-host, Gail Neuenhausen.
Hi guys, so happy to be here today.
So to recap, in our last episode, we focused on making your emails more personalized. And today we're actually going to go into covering on how to follow up strategically with personalization as well. And we want to do this because even the best emails sometimes need a gentle nudge to get a right response. And so we're going to cover in today's episode why follow-ups are critical, timing and frequency strategies that you can use in your emails, and writing follow-up emails that actually grab attention versus distract from the messaging that we're trying to give to the client. Next, we're going to go into using personalization and value in the follow-ups. And lastly, avoiding those common pitfalls or mistakes when we do our follow-ups, and hopefully be able to give you enough information to make sure that you can avoid any of these mistakes in your emails. So Gail, should we get started with the why? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, exactly. Now, perfect first question. Why are we doing follow-ups and why does it matter? Now, a follow-up is basically you just following up on the conversation that you started. So that initial email that we've been talking about in our previous episodes here in the last little bit have been about building that initial conversation, that initial piece that we send out that is supposed to incite a response. However, that doesn't always happen, and sometimes we have to dig a little deeper in order to get that response out. We say in our industry, in transportation and logistics, that typically it takes anywhere between 7 to 9 touches before you will get a response. And normally that's not even a yes response. It's normally like a yes, I got your email response. So we have to work hard in order to get to that stage to elicit the response we want. Now, most sales conversations, they don't happen after that first email. There is a transition period. It could be the next day. It could be 10 weeks from now. It could be 2 years from now. But it's the follow-up that counts, because without proper follow-up, we will not be able to reach them and we will never get a close. Because follow-up shows persistence and it shows professionalism. It shows that we're willing to put in the work, the time, the energy, and the effort to continue to reach out, to continue to build that bridge together until we've had that conversation.
I think a lot of it is just showing someone that you're actually going to be there for them throughout that process. It's not just a one and done type of situation, but that follow-up is what shows that consistency that, hey, I'm actually going to be there to help serve you long term. And sometimes people just want to see the follow-ups so they get to know you, right? The more repetition that they see your name and they see that, hey, this person's really making an effort. The first couple of times you just kind of brush it off as maybe spam, but then as these emails persist, you say, hey, maybe there's something a little bit more serious here that I need to delve into.
Exactly. And the more we follow up, the more that it's going to prove that we are a solution-focused company and that we are continuing to try and keep top of mind for the prospect. The more follow-ups we're doing, the more times we connect with them, the more likely they are to think of us the next time a need arises. So even if it's not a potential fit right now, or if they already have a service provider that they're happy with, the idea is to remain memorable in their head so that when the opportunity comes, they're like, oh, I'm going to call Damon because you have followed up enough that when they need you, you're the only person that you're going to think of, right?
And we always say, like, the money is in the follow-up. And this is where a lot of, again, if we talk about pitfalls and mistakes happen, is when people don't follow up enough. And they're just at the verge of closing that sale, but because they're not following up, they're failing to actually land that deal.
Exactly. Studies show that over 70% of sales requires multiple touches in order to close the sale. And if I'm being honest, that 30% that doesn't require multiple touches, the majority of those are consumer initiated. It's people coming into a store. They're like, I need milk. So they go to the store and they buy milk because that's what they need. Most of the sales that requires outreach from a company, we have to do the work for. We have to put that leg room in and continue to build those connections and relationships. Otherwise, they will not be created in the first place. So an effective follow-up can definitely turn a no response into a meaningful conversation, but you have to be willing to go through the work to build the sequencing out. Now, Damon, can you help us just kind of describe, how do we determine the right timing for those follow-ups? Like, how do we figure that out?
Yeah, so going back into, I want to just go into mindset first really quick and just say, this is why sales is so much easier today, is because there's so many distractions for other people. And when people get distracted, they forget about following up. And when people get distracted, they don't take the time to make the proper notes and figure out a proper follow-up strategy. And that's the difference between whether you're going to get successful in sales or whether you're going to miss it. And this is going back into timing and frequency. So if we make some sort of schedule for ourselves, then we have some sort of basis to kind of go off of to say, okay, well, hey, you know what? I'm going to make sure that I do these follow-ups, because this is where a lot of sales reps fall off. But if I'm consistent with my clients, they're going to see my consistency and they're going to see my focus to know that when I get my opportunity to serve them, that I'm going to be there for them. And that's what we want to show them. And we could do that through the follow-ups. And it's like, how do we differentiate ourselves from everybody else? And the follow-up is key for that. So create a strategy. What we typically say is, after that first conversation, sometimes I like to email right away and just recap the entire conversation. And so that would be my step one, followed by something in 2 or 3 days to just let them know that, hey, we're still thinking of you, you're top of mind, or here's the responses that you wanted for maybe some of the conversations. But I'm looking at ways to follow up with them within a couple days, just to let them know that, hey, you know what, you're still top of mind for me. And then I want to create subsequent follow-ups based on what they're telling me. So if I know that it requires, a consistent follow-up between 4 and 7 days, I'll do that. But then I'll also understand and say, okay, well, if they told me to follow up, maybe 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, a month from now, sometimes even a year from now, that I'm going to make a notation of that and follow up based on what that prospect and how they want me to engage with them. So I'm very persistent on making sure that I listen to them. And listening is that key component that's going to let you feel how to be consistent with that prospect without being pushy, and how to respect the prospect's time, because that's so important as well. So the more that we could show someone that we can respect them and monitor their responses to make sure that, hey, are we listening? Right? Again, if we're trying to build a relationship here, it's a two-way relationship, not just me being pushy, but me being able to listen and digest what they're saying and respond appropriately. And that's where we're going to put them into that comfort level to, again, build that relationship, build that trust first, so then we can move it on to those further stages. And again, it's our job to make sure that the customer does feel comfortable in that process.
Yeah, and this is where it comes down to us, because we have to be the ones that are writing proper and effective follow-up emails. If we aren't properly conveying what we're trying to say in the follow-ups, the message gets lost in translation. So let's go over what a good follow-up email is going to include. You're going to start off with reference to your previous email. This is basically your gentle reminder for the prospect of the context of that original conversation. What did we talk about? What were the main value adds? What was the call to action? So it's a quick reiteration of that.
And again, in the follow-up, this is important because we're continuing that process instead of starting over. So again, when we, asking the question, why are we doing this? What is a good follow-up versus a bad follow-up? And a good follow-up is always, again, hey, this is what we talked about before. Let's move this conversation forward. So again, knowing why we're doing that becomes a little bit more important.
Yeah, exactly. So like, for example, emphasize and reiterate the values rather than repeating them copy and paste style. You want to be able to add additional context to it and say, hey, this is the value and this is a different way that it's going to benefit you by using us. Like, you want to be able to just, sometimes it's just changing the wording and twisting it around a little bit just to give it a bit of a different language.
Yeah, sometimes I'll be like, hey, I know we spoke about A, B, and C, but I also wanted to mention, again, that's my transition into saying, okay, hey, I know we already talked about this, but here, let me show you what else I wanted to maybe explain that we missed last time. And again, it's just adding that value statements to add on to that previous conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Now, also, every email is going to need to include a clear CTA. Now, that call to action, you'll find that it will change throughout different stages in your sales cycle. That first initial email, the call to action might be just like, please reply if you have any questions or concerns about the information being sent over. Whereas maybe later on down the line, it's, can we book our first load with you? Or something along those lines. But it's going to have like an evolutionary change throughout that cycle, because your ask is going to be different within every interaction. And that's where you have to have an intention before you have a conversation, before you send an email and say, what is my intention? What do I want out of this conversation? And maybe it's you want a response, maybe it's you want a load, but that call to action should reflect what your purpose was in the follow-up in the beginning anyways.
And just maybe another tip for you to think about the perspective on this as well is to understand that, again, the reason that we're following up is because we didn't get the sale in the first place. And when we realize that we have to do something different to get a different result, then changing things up and doing things a little bit differently just makes more sense. Because if we would have achieved the result the first time, we don't have to change anything, right? So just understand that this is a continual process, that if we just kind of go through the steps, that we will eventually be able to get the close, but we have to start changing the dynamic of that email, changing and playing with words and building, right? That building blocks to get that successful outcome that we're looking for.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people can get a bit overwhelmed about what do I do in follow-ups? Like, how do I change the language? How do I keep adding different pieces of value? People overthink it a little bit too much. You don't have to go through and rewrite the entire story or the narrative. You just literally need to be dropping one new piece of information every contact point, every touch point. You need to be dropping at least something of value. As long as you have one thing, you're good to go, but make sure you're keeping it concise and keep it short. So every follow-up shouldn't be more than maybe 1 to 2 paragraphs at most. A quick recap, next ask, call to action.
Yeah, and sometimes it's saying, okay, how do I ask the same questions and maybe just rephrase it a little bit differently to hit a little bit differently. So we could also, again, a good follow-up could be just changing the structure of the way that we wrote that email and saying, okay, hey, can I make it more concise, more detailed? How can I relate it to make it more current, right? So some of these little steps that we can do to, again, get that outcome is ideal. But well, I want you to feel flexible to be able to change it the way that you feel is going to hit the right messaging for you, and to be able to get that clarity in that message to get the response.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Damon, can you give us some examples of how we actually go about making it stand out? How do we make the follow-up knock somebody out of the park without coming off as being annoying or pushy, or like we're just trying to get a yes from them no matter what? How do we do that?
So personalization. So we talk about a lot about personalization. Personalization and adding the value in the follow-up are those two key ingredients that make somebody feels like, hey, this guy's talking to me. And if I've done the right research and I could personalize it to that person, to that avatar, now it's going to sound like a conversation, and it's going to put that person at ease because it lets them know that I understand them, right? So even if it's company updates, industry trends, or I'm reminding the prospect of any challenges that they have and providing those solutions to address it, I'm doing it in a way where the tonality is very friendly or professional and helpful. And it's more like a conversation, not me just throwing information at them and just trying to be pushy with, hey, we do this and we do this, we do this. But it's like, hey, you know what? I really understand what you're going through. And my tonality is going to come across as compassionate or even more modest in nature, just to allow that comfort level so they're not feeling repelled by the email, but I'm bringing them in by, again, providing that comfort. So avoid repeating the entire original email when it comes to some of these follow-ups. Again, it's like, okay, well, if that didn't work, what's a new way that I can make this work? What's a new light that I can spread on this to make it more warm, right? And sometimes, even the holidays is a great way to be able to reiterate some of those points where it's more, friendly, compassionate. And again, wishing somebody well is a great way to do one of those follow-ups. And then you can create little calls to action in there and slide that in. So that's some of the tips that I kind of use when it comes to, again, creating that relationship with them. And that's, again, personalization, adding that value statements in there. How do you mesh it together really well to get that perfect CTA and response in that follow-up?
Yeah, and that's the nice part about sales as an industry as a whole, is there's really, while there's preferred ways and better ways and worse ways, there is no right or wrong way to do sales. It is what you make it, and through proper assessments and trial and error, you can build an entire sales system, follow-up schedule, sales cycle based off of what works best for you and who you are as a person, your personality. But with that being said, we do know that there are some common follow-up mistakes that we see sales reps make quite often that do impact how their results come in and the feedback and the rate of responses that they're getting in. So we wanted to go over with them because if we can give you a couple of tools to avoid that will help improve very easily for you, we wanted to provide that. So one of the things that we see a lot of our newer sales reps doing, especially at the beginning, is sending too many follow-ups out too quickly. This like rapid fire, hey, did you get my message? Like the next day, first thing in the morning, hi, I haven't gotten a response. That evening, maybe there's another follow-up, like, hey, I still haven't seen anything come back. And it becomes almost to the point of annoying or being overbearing. And so we do see that quite a bit. We also see people getting way too generic, using the copy to paste messaging where they are just maybe sending it out to a big list of prospects, and rather than taking the time to subset and subgroup them and developing personalized emails for those subcategories of industries, they just send it out to 10,000 people, regardless of what industry, what kind of company, what kind of business they're doing.
And Gil, I think that's a lot of those are happening because just people aren't taking the time to really think of how it's making the other person feel. And we talk about this a lot in sales, is that energy transfer from you to that person. So sometimes like when we're doing sales and we're doing too many sales, we get so robotic and automatic when it comes to our responses, our follow-ups. And maybe there's pressures from us, from our boss or manager that says, hey, you got to make these many follow-ups in a day. You have to make these many contacts in a day. And you're just not taking the time to slow down and really think about, well, is that really going to connect with the other person? Am I taking the time to personalize this? Am I really working on that connection piece? Am I doing this from a place that's heartfelt? And that's something, again, it's that energy transfer. If we understand that that's what's going to actually transpire and take place, how do I really show that connection piece to somebody? Because how do you expect to make a relationship with somebody if you're so automated in that process? And if you're just boom, I just need to get this out. I 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 need to automate this list. I need to automate this list. Again, pause for a minute, breathe, right? Really think that process out, and it's going to work. You're going to have better connections from it. Again, it's putting yourself into that position of saying, who's my ideal client? And who do I want to be for that person? And saying, hey, if I'm expecting this from the other side, how can I do that myself first to build that connection piece?
Yeah, and it really is true. When a sales rep doesn't slow down, when they're moving too fast, you can see it quite quickly because they'll do things like repeating the same information in their emails without adding value. It'll be a carbon copy or just a couple of changes in maybe verbiage when they resend an email. It looks like there was no effort put into it, and it's because they're moving too fast to honestly effectively put effort into it. If you can't slow down to breathe, you can't slow down to properly look at, assess, and address your email.
And then it starts looking like desperation.
Yeah.
I just need to get this done. And it's like trying to propose to somebody without saying, hey, maybe I can put some more effort into this.
Yeah. And that's for proposals or business relationships. You do not want to come off as being like aggressive or pushy or like desperate. Like that's not the image we want to be giving. We want to be giving calm, poised, professional. That's the image we want to give. Now, some of the best practices for us to achieve that are to make sure that we focus on adding value in every interaction, every follow-up, every phone call, every email. There should always be something of substance, something that adds depth, context, or value to the conversation. And you can do this by making sure it's concise and relevant and adjusting your messaging based on their responses, based off what's important to them. If they're telling you little clues of what's most important in their operation, you're going to want to kind of pivot your conversation to be in line with what's important to them, right? And then you can also use that to know, like, those conversations, those dialogues that you've had with the customer are going to give you clues into how they want to be sold to and how they want to be talked to. And by listening to them, you're going to have an understanding of when to pause when speaking with them, when to stop and give them a couple of minutes to address and absorb the information that you're having with them. Even when to pause on your email sequencing. There could be customers that you can tell when you have to pull back for a couple of weeks, months, let them ruminate with the information, and then come back in a few months later. So it's really knowing how to assess.
And that works in both ways, Gail. There's times when we have to pause, but there's also times where the customer asks us to do something where you need to respond right away. And you have to get into that action mode to be able to deliver on, okay, what was that conversation about? Do I need to prepare something for them right away? So those follow-ups can be, again, instead of pausing, you might have to accelerate, and you have to be ready for that as well and say, okay, well, if I'm sending out an email and I get the response that I'm looking for, ask yourself that question too. Like, am I ready to act on it right away? And have I made that time for myself where I'm not going overly crazy and getting overly busy where I can't respond properly to that client? And that's all about the follow-up too, is like, again, sometimes there's you got to pause, but sometimes you have to kind of go full speed ahead with that follow-up.
Yeah, exactly. And there are different ways of doing it. And there is, like I said, no right or wrong way, but there are better ways and better practices that will set you up for success. So hopefully you've been following along. And there is a worksheet, once again, attached with this episode. So go ahead and download it, open it up. If you have any questions, please do reach out and let us know.
For sure. And I hope you're able to find the right follow-up strategy and create the right follow-up strategy that works well for your organization, for your business, for your sales process. And we want to see you have that success too. And just remember, if you're ever feeling stuck, reach out to us in the comments, and we're always happy to see what you're going through, what your follow-up process looks like, what your sales process looks like, so that we can help you along that way. And that's what we're here for. But for today, that's going to wrap up our episode 39 of Following Up Strategically. And today, we always do cover a couple, key points. So today was about why the follow-ups are essential, the timing and frequency strategies when it comes to follow-ups. So again, you can follow the right timelines that are right for you and your organization, and how to write those concise, value-driven follow-ups that are really going to get you that response rate to, again, gain to that point where you're happy with the way that you're getting that input, or that input that you're putting in is producing the output that you're looking for. We also went over a couple other things, such as personalizing those follow-ups and the common mistakes to avoid while having some of these follow-ups. So I'm hoping that the information that we're giving you is hopefully helping you with your sales process. And so remember, following up is more about persistence and providing value and not pressure, right? So this concludes our Crafting Compelling Email series. So put these techniques together and research personalization, strong ETAs, and strategic follow-ups. And you'll see how higher response rates and more opportunities can help you in your sales process. In our next Mastering Sales segment, we'll dive into a brand new series, which is Closing Details or Closing Deals. And our next episode, we'll get started with recognizing buying signals, where we're going to teach you how to identify when a prospect is ready to pull the trigger and buy. That's going to be an exciting episode. So until then, follow up strategically, add value every single time you do a follow-up, and keep building those connections. Until next time, we're signing out, and hopefully we'll see you back in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.